What's up, people? Brother Brian in the garage. Kind of tired tonight. Settled down. Daisy's freaking out because of the fucking fireworks, man. She's freaks out. I got her medicated. It's gonna be a rough weekend for Brother Brian. You know what I'm saying? With the fireworks and this dog. I think this weekend I'm going to go through my records, try to put some organization in them, which I really hate doing because what happens is when you get your records and you start reorganizing them, and then you're like, hey, I want to listen to that album, and you're like, oh man, where did I put that album? You know what I'm saying? But that's not the reason I'm here. I I would let me say this. Let me digress a little bit more. I was thinking about doing like a like a tour in the house too, like get things because it's messy, and I don't really want to show anybody anything right now in the house until it gets straightened back out a little bit. So anyway, the reason I'm doing this video is I want to talk about my Marantz 1200B integrated amplifier. I think they made them they made them for several years in the early 70s, okay? Maybe even into the mid 70s. And I've had a lot of Marantz units, okay? Marantz make a nice sounding stereo. I've never really heard a bad sounding Marantz, okay? Now I'm kind of particular about what I want to hear and how I want to hear it. I like to keep my tone controls as close to the middle as possible. To me, it's like if you have to start adjusting things too much, it just, I don't know, maybe it's OCD. It just bothers me. To me, it's just like you shouldn't have to do all this, to get a good sound. It should just sound good. If something's right, it should sound good. I've had a Marantz 2252B. I had a beautiful Marantz 2252B one time, and it was in mint condition. It had the factory wood case. It wasn't like the ones where it slides into. It was like a wood case, and it had like a vent on the top. It was just absolutely beautiful. Um, I bought it in Columbus. I went to a guy's house. He was a stereo guy like me, and he had all kinds of stereo stuff, and he was selling it. And I got it home, and it sounded wonderful, man. It sounded fabulous. The problem with it was, for me, it was just a little bit too fluffy. It's like the sound was like the dynamics were turned up on the sound. Okay, it was. I know this sounds weird, but it was almost like too dynamic. If you was like to turn your treble up and turn your bass up all the way, that's kind of the sound that I was getting. And this is just my opinion. Okay, that doesn't mean that I'm right. I'm just giving you my personal experience with these units. So I had it. I love the way that it smelled. Man, I know this sounds weird, but it's like when I turned that old Marantz on, it had a smell to it. It was like the electric. You guys remember going into like the back in the 80s or the 90s when you go into like an audio TV, where you go, they had all that, and they had that smell. You had this like electronic smell, man. And that's really the thing I liked about it the most was the way that it smelled. It's like when it was on, it was like I was going into the Rex store, man, when they were listening to music. And yeah, so I ended up getting rid of it. I ended up selling it to a friend, and he's got it. He loves it. He enjoys it. And I don't really miss it. I don't really miss it. And had another Marantz. I think it was a 22, 26 or something like that. 22, 25. I'm not sure. It was something like that. It was a 25 watt Marantz. And to me, it didn't sound. It had nothing special about the sound. I mean, it sounded good. It was a good sounding unit, but it wasn't like something that was going to like put you, surprise you. Be like, wow, I really like the way that this sounds. Now, my Marantz 1200B, it's made in California, okay, Sun Valley, California. It's an American-made unit. Now, the 2200 series Marantzes, they were made in Japan. They were from overseas. A lot of the units that I have were made in Japan. I think Japan did a fabulous job with a lot of their units. Their speakers, Japanese speakers, I even enjoy those. I think they sound fantastic. But my Marantz 1200B is, to me, it's rather amazing, man, because it's always been a nice amp. Okay, it worked and it sounded good when I first got it. And then lightning hit. I was going to actually give it, because the sound was kind of good. It was, to me, it was better than the 2200 series, but it really didn't ever blow me away. And then it got hit with lightning. The transformer, I had it plugged in the garage, and the transformer out back got hit with lightning, and I lost 2 amps. One of them was the Marantz 1200B. And I had it for, I don't know, years, maybe a couple years after that. And then I finally took it to the shop. Okay. Took it to Columbus to this stereo shop there. Okay. Those guys, they worked on it for a while. And it's the same place that worked on my Kidwood. My Kidwood, I absolutely love it. Okay, they did a fantastic job on my Kidwood tube receiver. So I took it to these guys, and it was there for quite a while. I think they were struggling trying to get it fixed. And then finally one day they called me. They said, yeah, your Marantz is fixed, right? So I was like, okay. So I went and got it home. I think I did a video and talked to you guys about it a little bit then. And it was like the light on the front of it. It just was really bright. It was almost like something wasn't right. It was like there was a current issue or something going on with the amp. Well, one day I was listening to it, and it just fizzled out again. Quit working again. So I took it back to the shop. I was pretty discouraged. It took me a couple months. A couple months went by, and I took it back to them. And they give you like a 30-day or a 60-day, whatever. And to me, it wasn't about the warranty or even the money. You know what I'm saying? It was just like I wanted just to get this thing fixed. I wanted to get it. So I took it back to those guys, and they had it for months again. They had it for like months and months. And then finally I called the guy. I'm like, look, man, I said, where are we with this? Because I hate to bug them. I don't like to bug. Somebody's working on my stuff. I don't like to bug them. But it has been months and months. And I talked to the guy, and he says, you're Marantz. He goes, well, he says, we haven't really got to it, blah, blah. He's giving me this bullshit. And he goes, when did you drop it off? I said, last year, man. I dropped it. It had been like last year. And this was like in like the end of January of this year. And I told him, I said, it was last year, man. And I dropped it off. This is the second time you guys have had it. So about 3 more weeks go by. And they call me up, make a phone call. So I call him up, and he says, yeah, he goes, we can't figure out what's going on with it. He goes, we're going to have to call in. They had another guy. Okay. He goes, we'll have to call somebody else in to work on this amp. And I was like, oh, God. Well, come to find out that the guy that rebuilt my Kenwood had retired. Okay, he retired. Well, they called him in, okay, to come back in and do this special job for me for the Morants. He's going to get work on this thing. And this guy's he's just good. You know, there's just some people that work on these things that are just better than others, right? And I said, that's fine, man. I said, just give me a call when it's done. So like 2 more weeks go by, and the guy calls me back. He says, "Hey, your Marantz is ready." And I was like, "Oh yeah, man." I was excited. So I drove to Columbus. I live in Dayton. It's like an hour drive to get there. It's kind of close to the Ohio State colleges, OSU. It's kind of close to there. And but it's not that far. It's an hour drive. So I went and I got it. And I got it home, and I hooked it up, and it worked. I hooked it up in the garage. Okay, I kind of made a mistake. Okay, I hooked it up out here in the garage, and it sounded fabulous. It never sounded better, man. The light, the brightness of the light, it was back to where it was supposed to be, and it just sounded so good. I mean, it was just, I've got a lot of stereo equipment, lots of stereo equipment, and this may be one of the nicest pieces of equipment that I have for as sound quality goes. Well, last week, maybe a week and a half ago, I had it out of the garage, and I always unplug it. It's like when I'm not listening to it, I unplug it now, just because we get crazy storms, and I'm afraid. Well, I got those new speakers. I can't even think of the name of them. Pyramid Bottle 7s or something. Designed or whatever. Fabulous speakers. They sound fabulous. Fabulous sounding speakers. Okay. So, it was like 100 degrees, 95 degrees. I got the Marantz in the garage. And I got these new speakers, right? I'm going to hook these new speakers up to the Marantz. And I hooked them up, and it didn't sound great. I was like, wow, my Marantz actually sounded better with the Polks. So I listened to it for a little while, a couple days. Then one day I came in to the garage, and it's like 100 degrees. I turned on the Marantz. I got it hooked up to these speakers, these little speakers. And one of the speakers didn't come on, right? Then all of a sudden it starts to come on, and it's like staticky, and then it comes up to normal volume. And I was like, oh man. So I listened to it, and I was worried. I was like, oh man, what's going on here? Hopefully my Marantz ain't about to take a shit again, So the next day I come home, and I have it still hooked up to those speakers, those little pyramids. They're sitting out here with my Marantz. I turned the power on, and it will not come out of protection mode, because how it has like this click, like it comes out of protection mode. It would not come out of protection mode. And I was like, oh man, my worst fears have just came true again, right? So I got upset, man. I unhooked the Marantz. I was like, it's just too hot out here in the garage. So I unhooked it, and I took it in the house, and I put it in my storage room, and I let it sit for a couple days. Okay, let the temperature kind of come back down on it, I guess. I don't know why the temperature would have anything to do with it, because I'm sure that the unit itself probably runs hot. I think, okay, this is just my thought. I think that the Marantz just did not like those speakers, and it was just like, fuck those speakers. Now, I don't know. It says on the back of the speakers 4 to 8 ohms, whatever that means. So I'm assuming that they're 8 ohm speakers. Well, I hooked the speakers up to my Dynaco mono blocks, right? And it worked fine. But it did seem like the tubes in the KT88 tubes, it seems like they were just a little bit brighter. They were even having a hard time pushing these speakers. So these speakers possibly could be like 3 ohm or 2 ohm speakers. I don't know. There might be something else as far as the engineering and the design of it. So I unhooked those speakers and I hooked up my JBLs, right? And so it made me start thinking. I was thinking maybe that Marantz works. It just would not come out of protection mode because of those speakers. So I took the Marantz and I put it in the kitchen and I plugged it in and I turned it on. No speakers connected to it or anything. So I just hooked it up and it came out of protection mode. I was like, oh, thank God. So I ended up unhooking the Dynacos, which to me they sound beautiful. KT88 sound beautiful. And I took the Marantz and I hooked it up to the JBLs, right? And I hooked up my new step-up transformer to the phono section with the Denon 103R. And I hooked it up, man, and I was playing some music. And I hadn't done that with this Marantz since I've had it repaired, right? And I've been listening to it now for the past week. And it's just absolutely unbelievable, the sound that this thing makes. It's just, the sound quality is unbelievable, man. It is, the separation, it's just ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous that the things that this amp does. So, I guess, what I'm saying is, speakers are a big part. You want to make sure that you match your speakers well with your amp. Those speakers, if say that's all I had, I would be discouraged. But because I have the Polks and I've got the JBLs, I've got Altex, I've got, Electro Voice, Advents, I've got all kinds of speakers, different speakers that I interchange. The main reason I'm making this video is it's just mind-blowing, man. All the equipment that I have. And I'm still baffled and blown away by this vintage stuff, man. It just blows me away, man. That Marantz has a transformer. It's like this big in it, man. The capacitors in this thing they're like the size of, pop cans. It takes it a few seconds to come up because it's to power everything up. It takes it, like a lot of times an amp will just instantaneously come up. Well, in order for it to charge the capacitors and everything in this, it takes it a few seconds for it to actually get in gear. And the warmer it gets, the better it sounds, just like any other amp. But it does run very cool. It's 100 watts. It has a beautiful look to it. The look of it to me is just vintage. It screams quality, man. It just looks like quality. It probably weighs 45 pounds. It's a big, heavy, integrated amp. It does everything though, man. And I just hope it keeps working. It's old, man. But it's just strange because you would think that like a 100-watt amp would be a pretty tough amp, right? You think this thing's 100 watts. It's a pretty tough amp. But it's very sensitive. It seems like it's sensitive to different conditions, man. So you have to keep that in mind. It's like, it's not a good garage amp. Okay, it's not good with speakers that could possibly be running at a lower ohm, or it's just not very suitable for this amp. It's like some amps, man, you could just plug anything into them, man. They're just not ever going to fuck up, man. But this amp is sensitive. It's a sensitive amp. But it sounds so good, man. I'm telling you, it's just amazing. Um, I mean, you'd have to listen to it for yourself, man. And it's like anybody that loves music, jazz or vocals, rock and roll or whatever, man, would absolutely love this thing. I promise you, man. It just sounds fabulous. But it's old. To me, I just think the older stuff was just made better. It was just they put better copper in them. The capacitors, they're steel. They're steel. They're not this plastic crap from China, man. They're American made metal capacitors, man. There's fireworks, kid. It's okay. But to me, it's just their quality, man. You can always tell quality, man. A lot of times you can just pick up a unit and just know by the way it feels, how the knobs feel, everything feels. You can just tell that somebody made this thing. And, there wasn't a robot or a production line or anything making these things. They were made by somebody's hand. They were sitting there making these things and testing them out. Little Daisy here, look at her. She's scared to death. Oh, little fireworks. These fucking fireworks, man. What the fuck's wrong with people? What are we celebrating? Independence. We're a bunch of slaves. Come on up, baby. Oh, look at her. She's so scared. Scares dogs, man. Fireworks. People are sitting around having fun. Look at her. She's trying to get up in my lap here, about to have a heart attack. But anyway, let me get off here. I'm going to get her in the house. I'm going to turn on the stereo, turn it up loud to drain out the fireworks. I just wanted to tell you about my Marantz, man, and do a nice G-rated motherfucking video for y'all, man. Brother Brian's out of here.